Since the contents of this video is not related to vanilla survival, I have decided against making this a Dear Jeb video. However, I believe this idea could completely change the map making scene if properly implemented. The idea is simple, but I have many reasons to back up why it is necessary. Just like you can determine what a mob drops using the Death Loot Tables tag, we should be able to give an item a model tag, which tells the item what model to use when rendered. Simply specify a file path, and bingo, the model changes if it exists in the pack. Don't comment yet. I know many of you are going to completely dismiss this video and tell me to just use damaged item models to achieve this instead. There are many advantages a simple tag has over this method. Number 1, the ability to viably implement custom items with durability instead of using the unbreakable tag. 2, removing the need to calculate damaged item percentages and damaged items. 3, the ability to viably implement custom blocks in the game, as all the current methods have massive flaws. Number 4, the ability to viably implement new foods into the game. And number 5, infinite potential for right-clickable items. Let us begin with my first point about durability. If you are a map maker and you want to add a sword that has 100 uses, you need to retexture an entire tool. Not just any tool, but a tool with over 100 durability and a tool which takes damage when you hit a mob with it. But why the whole tool? Why not just simply use the last 100 durability points of the stone sword, then use the remaining 30 for another tool? Well, that other tool with 30 durability will not have a very accurate durability bar, plus you'd need to run a command which clears the player of that item, which, as we all know, on a big scale, that's a huge performance deal. Okay, so why not just use an entire tool every time you want to add a tool with durability? Because there are only 25 weapons which deplete durability when you attack with it. There's only one item which fires arrows while depleting durability, and there's only one item which can be used to block attacks. And every time you add one of these items, you're replacing an existing tool in the game which some map makers would like to keep. Okay, I hear you typing in the comments. There are command blocks in the game. Why not put those to use and add the durability yourself? This will allow you to keep the unbreakable tag. Well, I have found two ways to do this already, but both methods are terrible. The first method involves tracking usage on a scoreboard. Every time you use an item, the score goes up, just like I do with my staffs module. This has a few downsides. Firstly, there's no durability bar, so I must store it using the action bar. Secondly, I must add a new score every single time I add a unique item. Third, if I have two of the same item, the durability for both items will be synced, because the machine is not able to track the individual items. The second method involves clearing the player of the item every time they use it, and then giving them a new item with a durability tag 1 increment lower. This has many downsides. Firstly, there's still no durability bar, so I have to display it with the lore instead. Secondly, the give command puts the item in the first available slot, meaning the item can jump around when used. Third, I need 5 command blocks for every single increment of durability. If I want a custom sword with a durability of 100, I need 500 command blocks to run it, and that's just for one item. Okay, so why can't you just use the same texture for 2 different swords and simply give them different names? Because that's unprofessional. I'm not going to pretend this katana looks like a katana. It's obviously just an iron sword with a different name. If we just had a model tag to deal with this, adding tools with durability would be far more viable. Have you ever wondered why you don't see many maps where custom item durability is used? That's why. Side note, this is why I have also not added any custom swords, armors, or bows in the Tempests box. It's just too much of a hassle because of this issue. Speaking of making things easier, I'm going to go through the process I must go through when I add a new unbreakable sword to the game. And yes, it needs to be unbreakable because of the points I mentioned earlier. Firstly, I make the model. Then I put the model into my models folder. Pretty simple so far, but now I'm going to make a file which references the diamond sword. I need to add a predicate and then calculate what decimal I need to use to make this model render when my unbreakable diamond sword has a data value of 1. Then I must give myself an unbreakable sword with a durability of 1. It's a rather long process. It would be easier if we could just put the model into the resource pack and then go give at p 1 diamond sword with a damage of 0, model Minecraft, weapons, sword, / obsidian. There we go. Done, implemented. I mentioned being able to implement custom blocks into the game. Currently, armor stands have this very handy feature which allows you to specify a custom MBT tag upon placing them on the ground. We can take advantage of this to create custom blocks with a functional right click. SimplySark has also created a version of this which essentially does the same thing, but with monster spawners instead to reduce lag.
Allow me to explain. Now, if you ever actually want to add new blocks to the game, what you have to conventionally do is replace pre-existing blocks. So if you wanted a new block, you might have to replace grass, which works, but it's not always convenient because maybe you want to keep grass. But what I have for you today is something that allows you to add new blocks without destroying blocks or replacing blocks.
Both methods, however, share the same downside. When you equip an armor stand or a mob spawner in your hand, they look like armor stands and mob spawners. A model tag would solve this. Currently, I use dropped items to maintain this aesthetic. But unfortunately, it is not nearly as functional as simply right-clicking with the custom block. I must make a choice between function and aesthetic instead of being allowed to have both. I also mentioned being able to implement custom foods into the game. Simply giving a piece of bread, meat, mushroom stew, or whatever you want, simply giving that food item a model tag and renaming it will make it appear like an entirely different food. Currently, if I wanted to add new food into the game, I have two options. One, overwrite an existing food by retexturing it, or two, adding the food with commands, and let me tell you why that's a bad idea. How am I supposed to recreate that food animation and sound and slowness with commands? We'll start with the slowness. If I give the player the slowness effect, then it will overwrite any existing slowness the player has. Also, I need to create a system which perfectly times how long the slowness should go for. I need to consider if the player is hungry, and I need to consider what happens if the player decides to stop eating halfway through. Since I'm using a carrot on a stick to create the food effect instead of the non-existent model tag, I can't even stack the food, thus making them astronomically useless. By the way, if you're wondering about the carrot on a stick, it's so I can detect right-clicking. Furthermore, where do I even begin with that animation? I'd need to clear the player of the carrot of the stick and then give them a new item every time. The most viable method of doing this I can think of would be by using a bow instead of a custom stick. And even then, for that to work, the player would have to be carrying arrows, and then I need to decide what I must do with said arrow if it is fired, making multiplayer compatibility a nightmare, and that's not even considering, well, what if they let go halfway through their meal? Other custom food systems I've seen rely on placing a skull on the ground, which requires a ground in the first place, clearing the skull from the ground, and it needs to be instant. And I've seen another method which simply fills up your hunger bar when you drop the item, which is an unprofessional way of implementing it. All of this could be avoided if we could just put this tag on a piece of bread. My fifth and final point involves the carrot on a stick. The carrot on a stick is the best method of right-click detection. Every other method requires teleporting a villager to the player or replacing existing items. Unfortunately for the carrot on a stick, it has a durability of 25. That's 26 states all up. It could potentially become 53, but then the durability bar becomes visible and it starts to overwrite existing items, and then it just becomes a problem. 27 is not much to work with. There have been many occasions where I have wanted a system to be put in place, but unfortunately, due to the limited amount of durability that item has, I am very limited in how many custom items I can add before having to rely on the villager and the issues that come with that. One last suggestion I want to add. If a custom modeled armor piece is worn by the player, it should seriously be rendered as a custom model. I don't like having to teleport armor stands to the player every time I want them to look cool with custom armor. I don't want to deal with the desync issues that causes, and the workarounds for this are extremely limited. I know what you're thinking. So you're just suggesting to add item bound? Well, kind of. For those who don't know, Item Bound is a resource pack which takes advantage of an Optifine feature. If you rename an item, it changes the model it uses. My suggestion is different because it uses a mechanic your average survival player cannot change, a custom tag. The problem with the Optifine method is if you get one of those custom foods, renaming it will cause that texture to be lost. And in addition to this, you can name weapons and turn them into something that look completely different, which isn't always ideal for map makers. That's why I'm suggesting for this to be a tag and not something to be renamed. To conclude, Here's what's possible with a model tag: custom blocks, custom spawn eggs, custom food, custom potion, custom items with durability, improved custom armor, and simpler implementation of all of those things. Thanks everyone for watching. I will see you in the next one.